Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning into the SHC Business Podcast. I'm your host, Ethan Sisk, and today we'll be featuring men's basketball head coach, Craig Kennedy. In today's episode, we'll be discussing why he moved from Canada to the United States to coach basketball, the gift of collegiate athletics, and how he teaches people from all over the world English. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Good morning, Coach Kennedy.
Good morning, Ethan.
How's your morning been?
It's been great, thanks. I've got coffee going. I'm here with you. What more could a person ask for?
Probably a lot more, but we'll leave it at
This
that.
is a pretty good start, though.
Is this the first podcast you've been on?
First podcast with you, yes.
But you've been in broadcasting, you mentioned.
I've done some other stuff, yeah.
What was that?
Well, coming from a family of Irishmen, my dad was a gifted speaker. Two of my brothers were pretty good. And I got into rodeo and horse show announcing when I was very young. In fact, it's crazy. I was going through a box of stuff and found one last year, and I think I was 22 years old, and I was doing a really big show. So I got started doing that. And my hero was a guy named Bob Tallman, who is like, he's the greatest rodeo announcer of all time. He was kind of my hero. And somebody once said, you know, if you work at this, you could be the Bob Tallman of Canada. So, yeah, so I got started that.
That brings me to my next point.
Yeah.
You're a Canadian.
I'm from Canada. I'm Canadian by birth, but Southern by the grace of God.
Okay.
That's what I tell people.
In the rodeo announcing?
Yeah.
Did you have to participate in the rodeo before you could announce it?
No, you didn't. Thank goodness. There wouldn't be many pieces of you left if you have to get up after that. But I did try a little bit of rodeo. I grew up with about 30 head of horses, so I was always around horses and working with them and doing something like that. So I thought the announcing was going to be safer than the actual participating.
Do you miss being involved with the horses and living on a farm?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, I really do, because it was such an integral part of my life. At one time, I was riding about 6 hours a day, working with horses, and so I really, really miss them.
That's tough on the glutes, man. All that up and down.
Yeah. Well, once you got the hang of it, it was pretty good. Yeah, it was pretty good.
Was it a family farm?
It was a family farm. My dad started out, it was a thoroughbred racing farm and breeding farm, so we stood 3 stallions. He actually had some really, really well-bred horses on his farm. But it was run too much as a family operation instead of a business.
Gotcha.
And so I deviated from there, because working with thoroughbreds is a very, very English-oriented mindset. And I kind of gravitated more to the cowboys and the Western guys. And we had this old cowboy named Fred Harder who worked for us. And Fred was a real character. My dad we lived 30 miles away from the city. And in the town I grew up in, we didn't even have a stoplight.
What city did you live 30 minutes from?
It was called Winnipeg, which was a fairly sizable city. I mean, they had the Winnipeg Jets who play in the National Hockey League and the Blue Bombers who play in the Canadian Football League. So it was a sizable city of about 500,000. And we lived in this little town called Oakbank. And, I mean, there was not a traffic light in our town.
Wow.
But it's crazy because we produced guys that went on to play Major League Baseball, National Hockey League. In fact, guys from there just won the Stanley Cup. We had Olympic-level, university-level volleyball players. So it was amazing the amount of people that came out of there. But we had this small farm. And we had this guy, Fred Harder, who worked on our farm. And so my dad would get up in the morning when he was leaving to go to work, and he'd wake Fred up. And then when we left to go to school, hours later, we'd have to go and try to wake Fred up as well because Fred was still sleeping. But anyways, we had a little park near where we lived, and we had a little family picnic. And Fred wanted to come with us so badly. And Fred was a little rough around the edges, and so my mom kind of didn't want him to come and stuff like this because, Fred said some words that young kids aren't supposed to hear. But anyways, Fred persevered, and so my mom let him come. Well, anyways, this one day, we're out in the water, and I kind of got into a hole, and I started to drown. And I was going under. Now, my brothers may have thrown me in the hole. I don't know about that because they were all older.
A hole on the floor?
In the floor of the pond,
Okay.
yeah. So I was going down. And anyways, Fred saw this, jumped in the water with his cowboy boots on, grabbed me by the hair and pulled me out of there. So it's like the old Willie Nelson song, my heroes have always been cowboys. it was because of Fred after that, that I kind of got it more on the Western style horses.
I'm sure that helped his reputation with your mom after.
It did. Yeah, Fred was a little more in receiving of invites to little functions like that.
What age did you move to the U.S.?
I moved in '96, so I was about 33.
What inspired that move?
Well, I had been a volunteer assistant coach at a place called the University of Winnipeg, and we had just won 3 national championships in a row. We had a record of 101 wins and 2 losses in those 3 years, and the head coach took a D2 job at California, Pennsylvania. And so
California, Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
Which state is that in?
That's in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
It's Pennsylvania. It's a city of California in Pennsylvania called the Vulcans. So he took the job down there because, we'd won 3 national championships in a row, and let's try something bigger. Mm-hmm. So I got the team on an interim basis, and then I looked to come down to the States to coach because I wanted to go on the biggest stage that I could get on and coach against the best. And so I'd applied at Auburn University. I'd applied at a lot of schools. And head coach at Auburn, a guy named Joe Champy, I called him to follow up after I'd sent my resume down. And I was so naive back then. I used to get what's called the NCAA Market, which was a newspaper. Now it's online, of course, Excuse me. And by the time the Market got mailed to me up in Canada from the U.S., these jobs were all filled. But I didn't know. I was so excited and reading these things and applying for these jobs. Anyways, I phoned to follow up. And Coach Champy said, yeah, I remember your resume because we don't get many Canadians. He said, but I've filled the position, but I'll keep your information. Well, about 3 weeks later, I get a phone call from Coach Champy. Are you still looking for a job? And I said, yeah. He said, the prep school job in town is open. I want to recommend you for the job. So it's divine intervention in getting me down here. So we get in touch with the people at the prep school. They said, no, sorry, we've just hired. Okay. Well, about 3 weeks after this, I get a call from the prep school. Are you still looking for a job? Yes. Okay, the guy we hired just quit. We'll hire you. So they fly myself and my ex-wife down. We meet with them. Well, while we're down there, her grandfather dies, who had raised her. So it's like overnight we have to decide, are we going to take this job? Are we going to move 1,600 miles away from everybody we know? And we said, well, let's go for it. We had 2 young kids at the time. So we did that, but it was almost probably another close to 3 months by the time our paperwork went through with immigration and stuff for us to get down. So we get down, we're hired, and this is now going to be in October when we come down. And I'm driving the moving truck with my Ford Bronco on the back.
Nice.
We get to the border. I've got a 3-year work permit. Now, we do all this. We handle everything ourselves out of the immigration office in Virginia. Partway through, they transfer all our papers over to Texas. So we have to go through whole new people navigating these waters. But anyways, we get 3-year work permit. I get to the border. This old border patrol goes, you got a clean air sticker on that vehicle? I said, I don't know. He says, boy, you can't come into the U.S. without a clean air sticker. So we're there with a flashlight under the hood of my vehicle. We finally find it. He said, what are you coming down to do? I said, I'm coming down to coach basketball and teach. What kind of offense do you run? So I tell him that. What kind of defense? I tell him.
Well, what's your go-to offense?
Well, it kind of depends on the personnel. But, back then I said, well, we'll probably run some flex or something like that, And he says, okay, here, I'm giving you 1 year. And I said, but I got a 3-year thing. He said, boy, you can take 1 year down with now, or you can take your ASS back where you came from. I said, 1 year is good. Thank you very much. So we got down, and it was a 2.5-day drive with the moving haul, with the moving van. And I had my dad and my dog in the truck with me. No radio. There's no cell phones back then. I had a little tape player that was played tapes. And the battery died on it at some point. And my dad would hum the whole time. Dum-de-dum-de-dum-de-dum. And by the end of the trip, I don't know who smelled worse, the dog or my dad. But I was about ready to be done with both of them. So anyways, we did get down, and we then had to apply through the immigration office, which is now in Texas, and got our 3 years.
So did you have to go to Texas for the application?
No, we did everything on the phone.
On the
There was
phone.
no online,
Yeah.
so we had to do everything on the phone. So it was really important that you had the name of the person and they were familiar with your file. And so I was at a place called Lee Scott Academy. That's where I started out.
And that's
in
high school
Auburn.
age?
That's high school in Auburn. It's K through 12. It's in Auburn, Alabama. And so I was there teaching phys ed and coaching boys and girls basketball. We went to 2 Final Fours with the boys team. And I was always going to Auburn. The people at Auburn were so wonderful. Coach Champion at that time, Coach Cliff Ellis. And so I would go over and work camps. I'd watch practice and everything like that. And then I was working 5-star basketball camp, which is where Michael Jordan really had his coming out party. And
At your camp?
at the camp that I was working called 5-star.
Did you get to meet Jordan?
No, Jordan was older than when I was working camp. But I worked with Zach Randolph, who was probably the best player that I worked with at the camp. And I got hired from 5-star to go to Auburn and worked with the women's program there for 4 years. So
Did you also coach women in Canada?
I did, and that's where I coached at the University of Winnipeg. I coached women up there,
Yeah.
and that's where we won our 3 national championships.
How's it compare teaching women and men?
That's a great question. You know, when I started out coaching, I was a senior in high school, and I coached the JV team, which tells you how bad it was.
So, but coaching's always been something you wanted to do?
Coaching's always been something I wanted to do. I had a great uncle. We called him a great uncle. He was actually married to my dad's cousin. He would have been the first Canadian to play in the NBA. So basketball there was kind of this genetic, cosmic attraction to it, you know.
But you didn't get the athleticism.
Have you ever seen me shoot free throws?
I have.
Okay. Well, I didn't have to have a lot of athleticism to make free throws. That's for sure. No, I wasn't athletic per se. But then when I watched some of you guys play, I thought maybe I was athletic.
Good one.
Yeah, thank you. But so I started out. I coached the JV boys team, and then I started coaching girls team. And so I coached women for a long time. And people have asked the same question. You know, what's the difference between coaching guys and coaching women? And back then, I used to say girls played with pride, guys played with ego. And what I mean by this is that if I was demonstrating shooting and I missed, some guy in the crowd would always say, "Wow, how can you be teaching shooting? You can't even make a shot." Well, the girls would never do that. And the girls, once they understood why you wanted to do things, I mean, they'd run through a wall for you. So I always thought that was kind of the difference between the two.
Gotcha. Describe your relationship with this year's team.
That's an interesting question because I think I've been really, since I took over here.
That was 4 or 5 years ago?
6 years ago, I think now, when I took over. And I really took over a group that was really disheartened group of guys. They were really good guys, but they, they treated, they kind of treated basketball more like a fraternity. They wanted to win. They didn't want to do the work to win. They didn't understand how. And I think we really changed the culture. And this year's group was different because for some reason we weren't as close as I think we were with the other groups. I think I was also harder on them too, which may be why.
This year's team?
Yes. But I think we always try to have a really good relationship. I tell our guys, I coach by the golden rule. I'm going to treat you the way I wanted my children to be treated. Both my kids were pretty high-level athletes, and both had some good coaching experience and both had some real bad coaching experience. So there's days we're going to love them. There's days we're going to put a boot in their backside. But the next day, we're going to love on them again and we start over.
Is there a difference in Canadian versus American athletes that you noticed while coaching? Any cultural norms or?
Yeah, it's a little different here in the States in that you start at such a young age with kids playing club ball. And everybody down here thinks they're going to make the NBA. In Canada, and I'll give you an example, a kid named Todd McCullough. Todd played for Washington. He led the NCAA in field goal percentage 2 years in a row. He went on to play for the Sixers, played for New Jersey Nets. Todd was 7 feet tall. there were people in Canada still telling him he could make the NHL. So playing the NHL is like playing the NBA down here, right?
Gotcha.
You know, and it's like the challenge for us because hockey runs year round up there. There are hockey rinks that run 24 hours a day. Young kids, old adults still playing. And so you would get guys like him that would be playing hockey, and we'd be looking at him as coaches going, my gosh, I think this guy's got real potential. But they were so entrenched in hockey. Mm-hmm. And in the community I grew up in, like volleyball was the first sport every year. And we had really good volleyball teams. Mm-hmm. Like men played volleyball up there, very, very high level. Our team won the equivalent of the state championship. So I was always having to compete as a coach.
Like your volleyball team that you played on?
Yes. I didn't play on it. I was a scrub.
That's what you call me on the basketball court.
Correct. Okay. I was like you.
So I can assimilate to your role now.
Yeah. So, but we were pretty good scrubs. Like we could challenge our varsity team, you know. And we had guys on that team that went on to play at university and then to play with the junior national program. So it was pretty high level.
Is it all indoor?
It's all indoor. It was all indoor back then.
Have you heard of grass volleyball?
No, I haven't.
They're doing it in the north of the U.S.
Are they really?
Yeah.
We had,
but 2-on-2.
Yeah, we'd have snow volleyball.
Oh,
yeah.
Sounds like it would hurt.
Yeah. Well, no, it's easy landing in the snow.
Oh,
it's different than
ice.
Yeah, ice would hurt.
Yeah.
But for us, it was always a cultural challenge because volleyball and hockey were first. Mm-hmm. It's like when you move down here and you want to develop a basketball program while football's king in Alabama. Mm-hmm. So there was that. Because people start at such a young age here playing basketball in the U.S., I'm starting to see kids get worn out mentally and emotionally and even physically. I mean, some of the injuries that our guys get, I think it's just the wear and tear of playing basketball for so long. Yeah.
What are those common injuries?
Anything from knees to foot injuries.
Ankles.
We've had several foot injuries with guys, non-contact foot injuries, and I think it's just the wear and tear over time. Mm-hmm. You know, so culturally, you know, we dealt with guys who were volleyball and hockey minded first, and basketball was third on the pecking order.
There's a player on this year's team, Jalen from Canada.
Jaden.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, Webley.
Can you guys share common stories? And
we do. In fact, when we went to Memphis to play Lemoyne Owen, there's a Canadian restaurant there. So we went there to eat, and the food was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And the guy was really cool guy. So we got a picture of Webb and I together. And, so we talk about some commonalities up there.
What's the, I guess, best Canadian dish?
Well, people love poutine. They think that's pretty good. That's French fries with cheese and bacon and gravy on it. That's I mean, it's a heart attack waiting to happen. It really is. You know, bacon and eggs is a universal dish. I mean, it's not distinctly Canadian, but that's really Canadian. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah,
that's a Canadian meaning. You talked about him a while back.
Yeah.
Do you keep up with him? Or what's your kind of knowledge?
Yeah, I check on some stuff with him. Yeah.
I listen to some of his stuff and works.
Yeah.
How far is? I forget what city he's from.
He's Toronto. He's Toronto.
How far is that from?
Well, that's a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long way. You know, geographically, where I grew up, Winnipeg, that's the geographic center of North America, and so he's way over on the side there in the east.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What do you look for when recruiting a player?
You kind of, you know, excuse me, at this level, there's got to be something that you notice right away. We get with Pat Nyland, and Pat's such a fabulous, you know, he's the coach for you guys on the development team, and he's just such a phenomenal guy.
I agree.
But we get about 250, 300 emails a week on kids.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it primarily high school aged?
High school, junior college, international. We get them from kids. We get them from coaches, agencies.
Wow.
And, you know, it's kind of the TikTok thing, right? If we can't see something in the first 15 seconds or so, we're probably not gonna.
TikTok thing. What are you doing on TikTok, Coach?
No, I just know about this stuff. I don't follow it. I just know about it. You know.
Yeah.
So we got to see something. Like, I'll give you an example, Baril Kabamba. When I saw film on Baril, I went, this guy's got something special. And I'm going, well, I don't know why other people don't see this, but this guy's really, really good. So
that was in high school?
That was in, yeah, it was prep school. I thought, this guy's really, really good.
What are the pros to go into a prep school versus a normal high school?
Especially now with the transfer portal, it gives you an age of maturity. You get another year after high school.
Oh, really?
That gap year, they go to a prep school. So you get another year, and typically it's higher level of competition.
And I feel like it's a kind of intro to the college experience too, because it's boarding.
It is, very much so. Yeah. So it's, we got to see something. Like, if a guy sends me a film and he's a point guard, and the first thing I do is see him shoot a three, I go, okay, you're not a point guard. That's a shooting guard, and typically we'll get a highlight film. Listen, I can look good on a highlight film, and sometimes we'll watch, and sometimes they've actually sped the film up to make the kid look faster. Yeah. And then you look at, okay, we play, excuse me, we play in an HBCU, so I'm looking, what kind of opponent is this guy playing against? If he's playing against guys that look like you and me, I'm going, okay, he can't compete in our level.
Yeah.
So you have to look at those things.
When you're watching film, you break down whole games of the player, not just
we watch a highlight film first. If there's something we like, then we'll ask for more film, and then we'll try to break it down.
Is it you and Coach Nyland that watch that together?
No, typically it's separate. And if we see something, we go, okay, hey, let's watch this. Then we'll get together and watch it.
Okay. A thing a coach growing up told me, might have been the beginning of high school. He said, when scouts are looking at you, one thing they pick up is, like, if you hit the ground, do your other players run up and get you up? Because that means if they do, that you're a leader or all-team player.
Yeah, there's some truth in that. Yeah, there's some truth in that. We watch body language. What's the guy's body language like? If he doesn't get past the ball, or if he gets his shot blocked or misses, I want to watch his body language.
Get him back on defense.
Yeah, how does he respond?
When coaching a player, how do you develop the whole person, not just the athlete?
Well, that's a great, because they are student athletes first and foremost. And it's such a fine line, because, again, I'm going to treat kids the way I wanted my children to be treated. And, my son was a Division I football player.
Nice.
And he ended up, having a really bad experience the way they treated him. But there's also, this is a business. And the way things have changed in the last couple of years, it's made it more of a business with the transfer portal and everything. This is a business. It's a transactional relationship. We're going to give you X amount of money, and you're going to go to school and play basketball. So the school is first and foremost, because if you're not eligible, boom. But, we really like our kids, so we want them to succeed. And my whole thing is help the guys get to the next level. So it's when we lost Baril and Tana to Division I, well, it hurt us. That was our goal, is to get them to another level and help them reach their goals. So one of the first things we do at the beginning of the year is sit down and do goal setting with them. What are their goals personally? What are their goals academically? And then what are their goals basketball-wise? And then that's our job, is to try to help them reach those goals.
You're giving them a foundation. I mean, that's really special.
Yeah, we try to, and then it's teaching them about making good decisions. And you're probably in life, you're going to make a lot more worse decisions than you make good ones. But then it's like, how do you respond to it? You go in and blow a layup. Do you pout? Do you hang your head? Do you blame the official? Or do you get back and try to make the next play? And it's the same thing in life. You're going to we tell the guys, this is the best time of your life. You got a roof over your head. You go to class, maybe Tuesday, Thursday, maybe twice on Tuesday, Thursday. You're getting free food, and then you get to go and practice. It ain't going to get any easier.
It's not.
No.
And that's one thing I've found with college athletics. I mean, it's the best blessing out there. I'm not on scholarship, but even just being able to participate and just the personal development that comes with it. And for the ones that are on scholarship, you're getting a free education in exchange for developing yourself.
Correct.
Like,
correct. And so that's why it really chaps me when guys don't go hard. Because the statistics pre-transfer portal, 3.4% of high school seniors went on to play college basketball. 1% at Division I, 1% at Division II, and 1.4% at Division III. That was before the portal. So you're talking about a very small, very select group of guys. And to take that for granted, I was a guy too. I mean, I never got to play. I wasn't good enough to play. I was a volunteer assistant for 7 years. I never got paid. I had to
That's
pay.
just because your passion for the sport?
Yes. And
Wow.
I coached multiple teams at one time. I was an assistant at the university. Then I also had a high school team that I was coaching, and then I coached a senior women's team.
What was your ex-wife and family saying at the time when you were just recreationally coaching? Or not recreationally,
Yeah,
volunteering.
well, because I was still working, except when I was going to school. I mean, they were happy with it. And then when I got down here to coach at Auburn and stuff, that's when we had our children were young, and they loved it because they could go to games and they could, it was just such a beautiful experience.
Did you get away from coaching the higher collegiate level to coach them when they were in their youth?
No, no. I worked with them. I never, other than like rec league teams, I never coached my kids. I just coached them in rec league. We wanted to just give them a foundation of fundamentals. So the same ladder and footwork drills we make our guys do, we did with our kids. Once they became freshmen in high school, I said, I'm done. I won't work with you kids. You have to play if you want to. And for the most part, they continued playing in some form or fashion.
So they got away from basketball. They went football.
Well, my son went football because he was large. He was 6'4", 325 pounds.
Goodness.
So, but he could get up and grab the rim with both hands. I mean, it's a different level of athlete.
Yeah.
He was a really, really good baseball player. He was a really, really good baseball player. He was big and he could post up when he was younger. But as he got older, he wasn't quick enough. And then my daughter was a 3-sport athlete. She was the only 3-sport athlete at her high school in Troy. She played volleyball.
Troy, yeah. I just had a track meet at the college.
Yeah. How'd you like it? And beautiful facility?
Beautiful facility.
Isn't that a beautiful facility?
Yeah.
I love Troy. It's a great place. They have the longest serving college president in the United States there.
How long is that?
Dr.
tenure?
Jack Hawkins has been there, I think, 34 years now.
Wow.
He's an exceptional leader, just an absolute exceptional leader. And, I told people, a couple of years ago in the COVID time, we played Troy University. Well, I think we lost by 16. We played really, really well. I got an email that night. This is the kind of special leadership at this place. I got an email that night from Dr. Hawkins. It said, Craig, I'm sorry I couldn't make your game. I had a previous engagement, but I watched the second half on TV. I really liked number 24 and number 12 for you guys. I thought your team played really well. Best wishes the rest of the season. That's leadership right there.
Wow.
That's leadership right there.
I mean, that could just turn you into a fan of Troy for life.
There's no doubt.
That.
There's no doubt. And this is a guy who knows all the athletes. He goes in the weight room. He works out with them. When they have football and it's Armed Forces Day, he's got the flag for the Marines and he's leading the charge.
That's phenomenal.
It is. It really is. I mean, he's just such an exceptional leader. Anybody who wants to get in a position of leadership at a college or university, you should make an appointment and meet with that man. Figure out, okay, this is how it gets done. But yeah, so my daughter was a 3-sport athlete there. Softball was her specialty. She was throwing 63 miles an hour as a 14-year-old, and was being recruited by SEC schools. So
did she go forth with it?
She didn't. She had 2 bad coaches in a row and quit.
Damn.
So again, this is why I talk about the golden rule of how I would treat kids. And the worst thing as a coach is when a kid quits, but it's not for everybody. High level of athletics. Sometimes it's seasonal in that it may be 2 years of your life. You're really committed to this, and then you get other distractions. We know as seniors, all of a sudden they're going, shoot, I'm going to graduate. I got to get look for a job, and so their attention to the game changes.
When you were speaking about how you were you kind of were a role player, bench player.
No, I was a starter.
Really? Well, I feel like you mentioned that at maybe a different age than we're thinking of.
Oh, okay.
But do you think it's worth the time of a player to ride the bench all year and not play?
Yes. There is value in the process because in life you are going to go things where you have to persevere, and this one thing being part of a team. Like again, it's so special, and we talk to our guys about gratitude all the time. Having the gratitude to for what you have, the chance to physically be able to move and play, to be on a team with a bunch of guys, to travel with the guys, there has to be gratitude in that. And the reality is there are some players that are going to be better than you. And then it's to say, okay, how can I contribute to the goal of the organization? And so I think being on the bench, and we know it's tough. Mm-hmm. We know it's tough because guys have egos, and to be on the bench and not play, yeah, that's really tough.
Another thing you coach is voice tutoring.
Yeah,
or language tutoring.
English, I tutor in English, yeah.
And to who?
People all over the world. This morning, I tutored a woman from China. I get on regular. I tutored a guy from Saudi Arabia this morning, Brazil, Turkey.
So you can speak Chinese?
I can't speak a lick of Chinese. But we work things out.
How does that happen? Walk me through the dialect.
Wow, I mean, it's today was a crazy one because I work for this company, and they can pick lessons. So she picked a lesson today on Mexican food. And the company that sets these lessons up, like, if you're going to have people who don't speak Spanish, you'd want a real simple name like Pablo Cruz, They had some name on there. I couldn't pronounce the thing. So I just said, yeah, let's take a shot at this together, But here's what was fascinating, because her lesson was on tamales. So as we got talking about making tamales and the history of tamales and stuff, they have a food in China that's very similar. But they don't wrap it in corn, they wrap it in bamboo. And so we got talking about that. And so what I found in this, and in particular, I get a lot of teachers that I work with. I get people I've had everybody from, I had this one woman, she was running a $20 million company. And then I had another guy who was a soccer official from Japan. And I'm thinking Japan, like what kind of soccer do you have in Japan, right? And it was just so ignorant of me to think that way. But I said, so what else do you do? He goes, no, I referee soccer. And I'm thinking, how many games can you do in Japan? I said, okay, what's the best game you did? He said, well, I did Bayern Munich and somebody else. And I went, okay, yeah, you're a real high-level soccer player. Guys in Turkey, I have a bunch of guys in Turkey. I do one who is a really, really good basketball player over there, and he's been fabulous to talk with.
Are they recurring calls, or do you get new people each time?
A little bit of everything. I have some regulars that I tutor on a regular basis. I have a young woman from Turkey who's a psychologist, and I'm basically her psychologist. She gets on with me, and she talks for the whole half hour, and then she goes, oh, I've talked the whole time. You just do what I do. I go, yeah. So it's fascinating. But what I've found, especially with teachers, and we're so far behind academically in the United States right now, and we're falling further and further behind. But it's a dangerous thing because, for instance, in China, these kids are going to school 14, 16 hours a day. They go to a tutor in the morning, then they have school, and then they go to a tutor afterwards because they have to get into certain universities or they bring shame on their family.
We just don't have the work ethic in the States. I mean,
no.
What do you think a response would be if we told middle schoolers that they're going to go to school for 16 hours?
Oh, there'd be anarchy.
Even the anarchy would come from the parents.
Come from the parents. And in these schools, typically 40, 50, 60 kids in a class.
Wow.
So imagine.
What grade?
You name it. From pre-K up through 12. So you imagine how disciplined the class has to be when you get that many kids.
Yeah.
But one of the things is that we find with people when we're talking to them is the stress level on those kids is so high. Now, once they get in university, they party like there's no tomorrow because now they've made it. But they have to get certain standards to get into university. The admissions is so high.
But stress level is also, the more you stress, it's a tolerance thing.
Yes.
So you have to be exposed to it.
Yes. Yeah.
To get tougher. I mean.
Yeah. So it's really tough. And I talk with one teacher on a regular basis. She typically Saturday I'll have a tutoring session.
A Chinese teacher?
Yes. And she just vents for the whole half hour because she's just so frustrated with teaching and she hates teaching and doesn't want to do it anymore.
But she vents in English?
Yeah, she vents in English. Yeah. Yeah. So they have a little thing where they can type out a word and it'll translate for me what they're saying.
Oh, so y'all are looking at each other but typing to each other?
We can do that, yes, as well. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Back on the Chinese education, the TikTok, like we mentioned, their TikTok is all like the algorithm is productivity based, like advancements in science, advancements in math.
Right.
And then ours is dancing videos.
Correct.
What's your take on? I mean, like
I can't dance, so I don't watch them.
Yeah.
I have no sense of rhythm.
But it's poisoning.
It is poisoning. It is poisoning. And there is no phones in the schools there.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that in the U.S.
I mean,
there's no phones. And I've had discussion with professors. When I taught at Troy, and like when class started, the door was closed. You didn't come in late, and you sure as heck were not on your phone in my class. And I've talked to other people. Well, I don't know how to get them to stop. I said, don't let it happen from the start. You have to set standards. And so there in their schools, there are no phones. Kids don't go to class wearing damn pajamas. There's a different standard. And, it's really fascinating because I'm tutoring all these people, and some of them dance around certain topics. They want to talk about it, but they're not allowed to. So we refer to the little red book, but we never say his name. Mao Zedong, So
I don't know what that is.
Chairman Mao.
Yeah.
Okay. Mao Zedong wrote the little red book. That was there. This is how we do things over here. Okay. They just refer to the book. They don't never say his name. So I'm thinking all these tutoring sessions have to be monitored by somebody in their government. I'm sure of it. So some of them have really, all of a sudden, I'm fearful one day I'm going to be talking to this person and all of a sudden, poof, they vanish,
Yeah.
But some of them are, talk about, no religion over there, talk about politics. Some of them will get off on topics like that. And it's been very interesting. It's really opened my eyes. But what I found is this: we have more commonalities than we have differences, particularly the average people.
But do you think that's just with humans?
That's just humans. We're just people.
Yeah.
We're just people.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I've seen is that the education system is a train wreck worldwide.
So what do you think will happen in 20 years if the Chinese education keeps going like this, and then the U.S. we're on a downward trend?
The U.S. it's a great question you ask, Ethan, and the U.S. has a way of figuring things out, but we've already seen the influence we've had of relying on the Chinese funding in particular, the Chinese banks and stuff. My concern with the amount of farmland they're buying up and things like that, that's a greater concern with me. And they're also, and according to these people...
That's more of a national security...
That's more of a national security. Where I've talked to people from China said that China is sending people through Mexico to come into the United States. I was really surprised by that.
And there's they're getting into the maquiladoras. It's a factory system in Mexico, but it's I guess the definition is a factory of Mexican nationals, but owned and operated by a foreign entity.
Correct.
So they're buying up those, and then
correct.
I mean,
it's really it's concerning when diversity is really important. Cultural diversity. One of the women that I was tutoring, she's doing her PhD in Korea, and hers is on immigration, and how is immigration going to affect the culture of Korea?
Immigration from China?
From any other country.
Okay.
Because Korean population, same as the Chinese population, China used to have a one-child policy. Now they've changed that because their population is aging, and it's not sustainable. They don't see with the growth. So Korea is looking at the same thing. We're having an aging population. There's not as many babies being born. We need people here. So she was really interesting because she's doing this study on how do other people come in and affect culture. And it's important. The United States used to be called the American melting pot. You came to the United States and you were American. You weren't a hyphenated American. Canada was known as the Canadian mosaic. You came to Canada and you kept your other culture and everything else.
Which one do you think is
I love the pride of the United States. I always have. That's why I say I was Canadian by birth. But
do you feel that pride is declining?
yeah, very much so. Very much so. And obviously, the two-party political system is a real problem. In Canada, you have multiple parties. And if you don't like something, you could start your own party. Here in the United States, with the two-party system, you have no choice. It's gonna drive a wedge between everybody.
And it's already forming for sure.
Yeah. There's no middle ground.
How can one be formed?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, they tried it years ago.
What was that?
It was the what was his name? He was a Texas millionaire, probably billionaire. I'll have to think of his name.
Okay.
I haven't thought of it for a while, but they did try a third-party system. It just comes down to money. You know, you have the money to fund the thing.
But I mean, can't you run as a what is it?
You can run as an independent.
Independent, yeah.
You can run as an independent, but I mean, again, it comes down to money.
But then, yeah, you don't have the backing.
You don't have the backing to do the advertising and
so
everything.
it's a good idea on paper, and you can try.
Yeah, and it's so funny. I was on Facebook this morning. I like Facebook because I can connect with former students and former athletes and stuff. And a guy who went to school at my dad's school, so this guy's much older, you know, and he was putting this thing trashing Trump, and I'm like, I've got Canadian friends who can't stand the United States and they can't stand Trump.
Are they really? What's the calling to be intertwined in our politics?
Well, that's where I'm going, and I'm like, you guys got enough problem in your own country. Stay up there and fix that.
Yeah,
you know. But it's like the old thing of, you know, the Bible says, you know, the speck in your friend's eye versus the log in your own eye. I'm like, you guys have enough problems in Canada on your own. Fix your own problems up there. That nut job you guys have.
That's one of Jordan Peterson's 12. He wrote a book, 12 Rules for Life.
Yes.
And I think rule 1 was like, organize your own house, meaning
Correct.
like get your personal foundation before you go and try and help or do big things.
Right. No, very, very true. I mean, some of the stuff that went on during the COVID time in Canada was so borderline, I want to use the word Nazi, because what they did, I mean, there was a guy up there who was a minister, religious minister, and he had come from Eastern Bloc countries. And he was thrown in solitary confinement I think they threw him in solitary confinement for 72 days because he wouldn't close his church.
That's absurd.
That's absurd. And so you're sitting there going, okay, this is happening in Canada, which is supposed to be a really democratic country.
Yeah.
So it's like when I saw this morning and this guy's criticizing Trump, I'm like, guys, deal with your own problems. You know, but the two-party system is a problem here.
Yeah.
Now, Canada did start a party up there at one time called the Canadian Reform and Progressive Party. So they got their letterhead made up, they got their business cards made up, they got their envelopes made up, and somebody had written out the initials of the party. Canadian Reform and Progressive Party, CRAPP. Crap.
It just didn't go anywhere?
And nobody realized it until all of a sudden it was written on paper that their party was called crap.
So then...
it died. It died. It died a quick death.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Another thing with Peterson is during the COVID stuff, I mean, he's kind of maybe a free speech and just like a motivational advocate. He's a psychologist, but they were pulling him off all the big, platforms and networks.
And they had the big trucker rally, going into Ottawa to say, hey, this shutdown is enough.
Yeah.
And again, here's Canada, this is peaceful, loving nation. And the prime minister has snipers on the roof aimed at these people down there who have bouncy fun houses, and they're the only ones that are keeping the local businesses open. I never understood how come the big box stores got to stay open and the other people didn't. Why does Sam's Club? Why does Home Depot? Why do Lowe's?
They can donate more to the campaigns.
Probably so. Yeah.
There's so much out there, but it's one thing that kind of bothers me and probably a lot of people is that like the problems are so apparent, but the normal person can't act on them.
Yeah, what do you do? And at the end, whether you like it or not, so much comes down to money, right?
Everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's a real tough one. We're so controlled and so different here. The United States is so vastly different. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. She had to have eye surgery for cataracts. Well, the government allows her $3,000 to have her cataracts put in. But the ones she needs to have to help her cost $6,000. So now, so now she would have to pay another $3,000 to get her eyes fixed properly. People talk about the socialized medicine of Canada, and they think it's so good. But what happens is, if you and I had a similar situation, health situation, because you're younger, they're going to give you a more aggressive treatment because you could live longer than me.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas at my age, even though I'm a better free throw shooter than you, they're going to sit there and they'll give me less of a treatment.
Mm-hmm.
So many of our friends up there, they would just come to the United States to get treatment. So it's not a.
But I mean, with the airline tickets and hotels, I mean, it's still not a, reasonable trek.
Here's the thing: I had a friend who died in Canada because he couldn't get in to get an operation to get a kidney transplant. The time it takes you to get in and meet with a doctor. So if you go to see the doctor and say, hey, listen, I tweaked my knee playing basketball. Can you look at this? And, oh, by the way, I also fell and hurt my elbow. They would say, okay, no, we can only look at the knee today. Now you have to get another appointment for the elbow because that's a separate thing because it bills separately through the government.
So it's all centralized, meaning like free healthcare?
Yeah, free healthcare. You just pay for it out of your taxes.
Yeah.
And whether you can get it.
So higher taxes, and also it probably really diminishes the quality of healthcare because there's no competition.
Correct. And so you have the best doctors leave there because there's a limit on how much money they can make. So the best doctors will leave there and they'll come to the States where you can make as much money as you want. But you don't have malpractice up there. Where down here you have to have malpractice insurance.
Can you expand on what malpractice is?
Sure. So if something goes wrong in the operation, you can be sued. So the doctors take out malpractice insurance, which costs them a lot of money. It's just like having insurance for your car.
Yeah.
So if something goes wrong, you're covered. Also in Canada, you would have, for instance, auto insurance is all owned by the government. It's called Auto Pack. So
is it pretty expensive?
It's same price here, but you can't compete against anybody else. I can't go to State Farm. I can't go to the General and try to get a better price.
Yeah.
It's one price.
Yeah.
The liquor stores are all owned by the government.
I mean, I bet they make a killing off both of those.
Well, what they used to do is they'd have a liquor store right near a welfare office. I mean, it was the most obscene thing you'd ever see. I mean, it was just such a blatant slap in the face of what was going on. But,
Well, through our time on air, we've really covered a lot. And,
we've covered some bases. I still don't understand the name podcast. Like I talked to you earlier, like you have pods for your coffee, your K-cup pods, and then you had pods for soap. And there was an issue with pods for all kids snorting the dang pods. We had a kid my first year here. We called him Pods because he'd never done laundry before, so I nicknamed him Pods. I don't know how they came up with the podcast.
Did you do his laundry for him? Put it in the team washer?
Heck no. We made everybody learn how to do their own laundry. Yeah.
Podcasts, it's definitely gaining popularity. It's a newer, I guess, just long discussion, conversation format.
I know what it is, but where did they come up with the name Pod?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah. See if you can find. That's the thing. Like I said, there were pods for your laundry and there's pods for your K-cups.
K-cups?
Yeah, for your coffee maker. There's a coffee maker in the locker room. You know that. You guys use my coffee maker all the time.
Podcast is a portmanteau or iPod and broadcast.
Okay, so it came from iPod. Okay, probably came from iPod.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But I think they're definitely gaining popularity just because it's a trendy thing. But I think it's here to stay because the ways to gain information are being scrutinized for what's true and what's not. And like the news snippets are, like 120 seconds of this.
Right.
You can't learn.
You can't learn it.
And that, but and especially with the introduction of AI, and everyone's questioning. Everything can be faked easier nowadays.
Right.
But it's really hard to fake.
One-on-one
an hour
conversation.
of conversation.
Yeah. In fact, I talked to a guy who's an AI specialist in Turkey, and I had a fascinating conversation with him the other day about where are things going to go with AI technology and what jobs are going to be okay and what jobs are going to disappear. It's scary.
I know for sure that they can't take a basketball coach and a podcast host. So.
No, they can't. They can't.
We'll be all right.
Yeah, we'll be okay. This could be like a bunker for us in here.
It could.
Yeah.
You and I we'll hide out here and
just talk about talk about stuff.
Thanks for coming on, Coach.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir.
All right, buddy.
I would like to personally thank everyone who tuned into this episode of the SHC Division of Business podcast. Our aim is to give young professionals insight into their desired field or potential job of choice. If you gain anything from this or have any compassion whatsoever, please share with someone you see fit.